So how is therapy important and how will it help?
Well, the hope is that it will reduce those impacts that we're talking about. That it will, firstly, that it will build a sense of safety and stabilisation for the child and for the family, and then build their understanding around what it was that happened to them and who was responsible for that. And then I guess if the child's ready emotionally, or if they're ready developmentally, then we can do some trauma processing work, which can look different depending on what sort of therapy practice, to help them to actually process what it was that happened to them and thereby reduce the disturbance associated to it.
So that basically means you're helping the brain's natural healing process that's kind of got a bit stuck.
Yeah. And then if they get just enough of that sort of support, and you can see that, they're not having nightmares every night anymore, it might be once a month, and they're able to sleep in their own bed, and they're back to wanting to go and play at their friend's house, then they're really good signals that good piece of work has been done, and maybe they can go off and be a kid for a while and come back again if they need to.
And that can be really important where the therapist is working in with the family, because if families are saying, well, wait for the child to signal that they're ready, and the child's going, well, I'll wait until I have to, then you can kind of get into that kind of stuck pattern. So again, often what we're doing is saying, how do we just create a little bit of the need to be a little bit brave, but in really safe environments. So there's a little, if I am sleeping in mum's and dad's bed, then actually how do we just mean that, because the risk is that if we keep having you sleep in our bed, we're kind of inadvertently giving you the message that your room is unsafe.
Or you're unsafe on your own.
Or you're unsafe on your own. So it's that idea of understanding that that's the message their little brain might be telling them. But we also want to give them another message about how they can resource themselves. So it's little bite-sized chunks of bravery and strength required. And that might require you as the therapist to support the parent, to support the child, in terms of who's got your back.
And this takes time, and we don't know how long, because it's such an individual, unique response. But it may be entirely appropriate for your 8-year-old to be sleeping in your bed for however, for the first period of time, because that's how they can feel safe enough to get to sleep. And you might all need some sleep, right? Because that's a really big part of healing the body, is to have good sleep. So it's case by case, and it depends on what feels right for your family.
I think the other thing with regard to this particular trauma, we were talking about more general traumas last time, but this clearly involved, sexualized behaviour. The child was sexualized, and so we need to kind of also develop an understanding, or at least open conversations around a child's sexual development. And often this is the bit that parents go, yes, we know that happened, but we don't want to think about we keep saying 8-year-olds as being a sexual being, because it's like, that kind of just grosses me out and kind of reminds me about what happened. And so if we just kind of forget that part of them, and we might be kind of okay with the idea that there's a nightmare, or we might be kind of okay with some other aspects of their behaviour, but the idea that there might be sexual impacts is something that as parents, we're not naturally wanting to lean into. I think one of the things that we try and really reinforce is that in reality, sexual development happens when a child's born. We're learning about what touch feels like. We're learning about the beginnings and ends of our bodies. We're learning about, what we have control over, what we have autonomy over, what feels nice, what doesn't feel nice. So, again, when you've had a harmful sexual experience over time, or even a one-off, that's going to impact that. Now, again, it doesn't mean it's broken, but it means that, we've had parents coming in who say, my child masturbates, and they just shouldn't. But again, the child's going, well, actually this kind of helps me deal with the feelings I've got, or actually I don't know how not to do it because this is kind of part of what happened to me. And so as parents, they have to sit that real uncomfortable thing that my child now has knowledge about sex. and about sexual functioning that I didn't want them to have. And so how do we not pathologise that? How do we, in some of the work we're doing, it's about, again, age appropriately, but just talking about, we can't kind of put you back to the stage you were before you had that knowledge. You have that knowledge now, but how do we frame it up in a healthier way, in a way that doesn't make you the demon or the person that's got this wrong, but tries to put that in a frame that, who can you talk about that with? Or if you do feel like you need to masturbate, I don't know if we're allowed to say that word on but where do you do it, and do it privately, and actually what are some other ways you might want to self-soothe that actually you can do publicly, there's often, fears that when our child has been hurt, that they might go on to become someone who hurts, sexually harms. And again, yes, there's evidence to say that sexualised play, as Sam said at the very beginning, can be one of the symptoms, can be one of the things that comes of this. But there can also be a lot of other things that can cause someone to harm sexually. And so don't panic, they're not going to become, someone who sexually harms. If they do get involved with some harmful sexual behaviour, there's really good interventions there. And I understand that STOP, talked about that. So if people are concerned, have a look at the excerpt from STOP, because that'll have some really good information on that as well.
And I'd also suggest if you seek support for your child, the chances of that would be greatly minimised, that they would go on to sexually harm, because usually it's children who haven't had support, who have had their own sexual abuse maybe as a really young child, and that has become their way of showing affection, or their way of showing love, or their way of having sense of control over their environment. So it can get a bit mixed up for them when it happens to very young children.